Hi, Reggie. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tammy Grogan. This is Paul Ferguson with Pillar to Post. And
Hi, Reggie.
is that am I getting a backlog here? Oh, probably maybe off of that laptop. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, couple things. I just want to introduce Paul Ferguson from Pillar to Post, and Paul is obviously been in his industry of home inspections for, oh my gosh, Paul, how many years have you been around?
22 years.
Fun.
Years, which, 22 years in Paul's industry, much like mine, it has really changed and evolved.
Trying to get that policy to go through.
Hold on one second.
I think that's Reggie's.
Yeah.
Hey, Reggie, are you on?
You fixed what's wrong first. Don't roll everything out. I think when they rolled those last 4 states out, everything went haywire.
Hey, Reggie, can you hear us?
I muted Reggie.
Oh,
He's
okay.
muted. So Reggie,
Okay.
we had to mute you because we were getting some backlog on your conversation. So I hope you don't mind. But Reggie, please feel free to unmute yourself. And, if you have a question, please feel free to ask. But Paul's been around for 22 years. The only thing I can assure everyone about the industry of home inspectors is, to this day, there is nothing license-wise in the state of Ohio, to my knowledge. Has it changed, Paul?
It actually has. Yep. Just this year in July, we now are it is a license requirement to do home inspections.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So what is the requirements for that? Because for those that are unfamiliar with home inspecting, up till July, which again, I think that's really important to get out there, a home inspector was not required to be licensed. They did not require any background at all in home improvements, construction, anything. Basically, I could walk out of my job today and I could have said, I'm going to hang my shingle and become a home inspector tomorrow. So it was a very unregulated field, correct, Paul?
That's right.
So just out of curiosity, when you say they changed that in July, in what way did they change that? Because what is their mandates for your license laws now?
Okay. Yeah, great question. And it's been coming for several years, but COVID, some regulations as well as COVID pushed it back almost a year and a half. So we've been licensed since they started this back in 2019. But in July was the final deadline where inspectors had to pass the national exam, which out of all the things that you can do within the home inspection world, that would be the hardest thing to pass. So when I send people through training, or I went through training a long time ago, that would be the test of how much do you know. And so the state requires you to pass that, to be through, I think it's 120 hours of classroom training and or in-field training. And what else? The only thing I'm disappointed about is they only require general liability insurance as opposed to errors and omissions as well. And I think they're going to work on changing that. So, which the difference is, general liability is just simply if we, break something while we're there, that would be covered like an expensive vase. But errors and omissions, if I were to miss a major structural or foundation issue, or fire damage in the attic, errors and omissions is to cover a home inspector for, up to, we carry $2 million worth of insurance. So anyway, it's really important to pick one that has that. So the requirements are that: pass national exam, have the 120 hours, carry insurance, and a bunch of people were actually grandfathered in. So it's mostly going to affect the new people coming in.
Well, and again, I think for those that are joining us this evening and kind of, learning the process of home inspecting as part of your home buying process, I think 2 things. I think, you need to do your own due diligence. It's kind of like the agent that you choose. There are thousands of realtors out there, but it's really, really important that you tether yourself to people that are experts in their field and have a background in what they're doing, because this is the largest purchase that you'll ever make in your lifetime. And so, you know, when you think about that and you think about the cost of doing a home inspection, I tell everyone, you know, again, you're not looking for the cheapest deal you can get. It's not about that. It's about getting a thorough home inspection from the basement, outside, up to the attic. And, you know, oftentimes it's not, you know, who's going to do it for $250, because like I said, it's the least amount of money you're going to spend in this transaction on the front side. And what I mean by that is, of course, once you go under contract, your next step is to get that home inspection. And, you know, it's so important that you have a thorough home inspection, because like I tell everybody, at the end of the day, if there's a discovery made during a home inspection that you're uncomfortable with as a buyer, it's not the end of the world. Like, you sever your ties, you do your mutual release, and, you know, at the end of the day, you move on, because there's always going to be another home for you to purchase or buy. It might not be tomorrow. It might take a month. It might take 2 months. It might take a year. But at the end of the day, you don't want to buy a house that, you know, you are uncomfortable with based on your home inspection results. With that, I just want to, you know, say one more thing about that, Paul, is that a home inspection, I tell everybody, is not intended to reinvent the wheel. And what I mean by that is there is going to be a laundry list of things on a used home that come up in a home inspection, you know, a leaky faucet, a loose handle, a crooked door. I mean, you know, there's stuff that's going to be on that home inspection report that you can't expect the seller to repair, because at the end of the day, you're looking for major fundamental. What I mean by that is your furnace, your air, your windows, structural. You are looking for those. It is not a cosmetic repair checklist. And, you know, at the end of the day, there are things periodically that come up in a home inspection that kind of blindside us all. Correct, Paul?
Absolutely.
Yeah, such as like a sewer scope. I think, you know, two things we'll talk about, obviously the whole point of the home inspection, and I'll let you talk about that. But I think the other inspection that my team find incredibly important is the sewer scope.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Did you want me to touch on that for a minute?
I do.
Sorry.
What exactly is a sewer scope?
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, sewer scope is, this is a terrible thing if you're eating dinner, but it's like a colonoscopy for your home. It is definitely something that you don't see, and it's extremely expensive if you don't catch it. What we do is we put a camera into the sewer line, which runs out to the street, and we're looking for any damaged main lines going out to the street, any roots and debris that would block it, so that, you know, if you were to have a backup, where it's going to go is generally into your basement. So we want to make sure that's free and clear, and that there's nothing going to hinder everything that you're flushing away and wanting to go away from the house and not come back.
And I think too, to share, like, what is it that clogs those drains? Oftentimes it's tree roots. So anytime we see beautiful trees in people's yards, we go, oh my gosh, those are beautiful. But we also have a little light bulb come on and we go, uh-oh, tree roots. And the first thing that comes to our mind is that sewer scope, because that's 90% of the time, is that not what typically blocks those sewer lines, are those wonderful tree roots?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
And sometimes they're easy fix. Sometimes they're just like a flush out of the line.
Well, generally, if we do find the roots, or is that what if you're referencing the roots still, like a company like Roto-Rooter will come in and they have an auger that just blows right through those roots and then opens it up again. The problem is, you know, that's going to come back. Once it's found its way in, that's going to be kind of an annual service you'll need to make sure you stay on top of.
Right. And I think the other thing that they discover a lot of times, I know in our sewer scopes, is damaged sewer lines. And that's where I think Paul was sharing, like, that can literally cost you thousands of dollars depending on the length of that sewer line, correct?
That's absolutely right. The reason why we got into this was an agent that said, we love what you do. We've worked with you for 20 years. However, why don't you do sewer scopes? I had 2 clients in the last year that one spent $12,000 and one spent $17,000 on repairing their lines. And it's not just about the lines. It's, if you think about it, it's tearing up landscaping. Sometimes it's not driveway, I hope, but sidewalks where they go under and through. So it's putting all that back too, once you dig it out and get that repaired.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about that, I actually, the most I've ever had, and it's a lot, was about $15,000. It was in Cuyahoga Falls. If anyone knows Cuyahoga Falls, those trees are lined with these beautiful big trees that have been there for, 50, 60, 70 years. But it was exactly what you're saying. It went under a driveway. I mean, the under a front porch. I mean, the extensive cost of what had to be done to replace that sewer line. And when you think about Cuyahoga Falls, the distance from the house to the street is not all that great. So, you take a sewer line in an area where the house is sitting, 60 feet off the road, that is a lot of money to replace. So the other thing, of course, is a home inspection and a pest inspection. So I think just talking about a general home inspection, Paul, what should people be looking for as far as, what happens? And of course, I know what happens, but you want to share with them, like, what is it that you're doing on behalf of the client when you're home inspecting?
Yeah, that's great. So there's 10 steps to the process of a home inspection. And if I could just kind of lay that out, there's the portion of meeting and greeting the client, hearing any concerns, talking to them about their where they'd like to focus on, explaining to them what the process looks like. And then from there, we're looking at the property and site area, the exterior of the house. We're really focused on trying to get on every roof that we can get on. If the pitch is not good to get on and it's icy and snowy, we make sure we get binoculars out, we're getting a good look. But quite honestly, a lot of times what evidence of problems on the roof show up in the attic. So we do count on that quite often if we can't get on a roof of what's going on up there. Structure is a big one, right? So we're looking at the basement, the structure. Is there any movement to the foundation walls, crawl space areas? Then we look at the major mechanics such as electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning. And then after the big stuff goes on, we go through each room. We're checking outlets and we are checking faucets for leaks. We're opening and closing doors and windows to make sure they work properly. So ultimately, we're looking for all of that. On top of that, we're looking for health and safety as the big part of this. So main things, what I tell every client, a home inspection is, you're looking for health, you're looking for safety, mechanical, and not, you already said it earlier, but not all of the cosmetic problems in a home. That's not what we're there to see.
Yeah. And I think when Paul talks about safety, I mean, things that we often run into, number one, are the sewer lines, to be honest, guys. Again, if you're buying a house that's 50, 60 years old or whatever, I've even had homes that are 20 years old. And, if you see like heavily treed lots, and that's the first thing that should come to mind is a sewer scope, in my opinion. But I think the other thing too is, during the home inspection, things can be discovered. Mold in attics are very prevalent, and it's nothing to get excited about. There are like remedies to that oftentimes we ask the seller to remedy. But I think, again, those are discoveries made during home inspections that you as a consumer and a buyer, when you're purchasing a home, we don't have access to climb into the attic spaces. That's nothing we're allowed to do. So, that's where Pillar to Post and what Paul does, because again, they will walk you through, they'll explain to you, how things are fixed and remedied. And, again, things like the mold in the attic, because the vents from exhausts in bathrooms were vented forever into attic spaces. And so that was how homes were built. Not that anything wrong with it. It's just back in the day when they did that, no one realized that was going to be a perfect storm for molds. And 99% of the time, and Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, those molds are nothing harmful for the most part, correct?
Yeah, I can touch on that if you like. There's a lot of people that get concerned about health problems because of mold in an attic. One of the first things we assure them is that is an outside airspace. You literally have air coming in through the soffits, out through the top of the roof. and you will never have a mold-free environment in your attic, but you're protected by your drywall, by the insulation that does not float down into the living space. So when we get into an attic and we see the sheathing is just covered in black, people can panic and get excited about what is that gonna be, and is that gonna hurt my family? And I assure them that it does not get into the interior of the house. And you're looking at about a less than a $2,000 fix, 2,000. Sorry if that didn't come out right. Generally about 1,500. So, and then the bath vents, you're absolutely correct. Those are about $150 a piece to run them outside. Tammy, the one thing I will tell you is they're still doing it. So even in new construction, you walk into a, yeah, and I, I don't understand it, because if we all understand what happens, soffit vent brings air in, but they run the bath vents to the soffit. So it's literally just back venting into the home. And over time it goes there. So.
Yeah. And for those that have no idea what this looks like, because I think when we talk about it, it sounds like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go in my attic and there's like literally mold hanging off the ceiling. It actually looks like smoke. Doesn't it, Paul? It looks more like you would think. The worst I've ever seen, it looks like somebody had a fire in the house at some time and everything's kind of covered with black smoke. But that's what it is. So again, it's maybe not what you as a consumer would visualize, because it's not at all the look of like a mold that grows on your basement walls or something, correct?
Right. And it can, basement walls could look that dark, but you're right. Exactly. It likes to cover. And I tell you, the reason why it covers so much is, especially in the wintertime, that mold grows when all of the sheathing up there. So you've got a lot of humidity in the house. It all goes up to get outside of the attic. It gets trapped on the underside of the sheathing. And then so if we're ever in a home, and the north side of the homes are always worse, because as the sun is not melting that ice and snow, you can go into an attic and see frost all over the plywood. And so that's why there's so much coverage, because the plywood itself gets so wet. And that's when the mold grows. In the summertime, it's usually not so much.
Yeah. And I think as well, when you talk about the basis of the home inspection and the items that you look for and the things that you do, the other big inspection is a pest inspection. Although I would say any good home inspector, if they are in a basement or an area and they suspect that there could be wood destroying insects of any kind, I would think that they're certainly going to bring that to the buyer's attention and recommend further investigation, correct?
Yes, just keep in mind that that's a state license. So there are guys that are they will stay away from commenting on that if they are not licensed, because first of all, they may not have been trained properly. They might tell you something completely wrong about what they're seeing. So it depends on their experience.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying advise people, you need to get a pest inspector out here to look at this.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you meant tell them what's going on.
No.
You're absolutely right. If that's our whole job as a home inspector, right? Is to see red flags and then say, okay, this is beyond what I can talk about. We're going to recommend you to that professional.
Correct. And again, for those who have maybe never done a home inspection, it's just so important that your home inspector, number one, if there's a suspicion about like a furnace, any good home inspector is going to recommend that you take it to the next level. And again, as a consumer, that is your responsibility to do your own due diligence and look at your agent and say, hey, we need to have this investigated further. Number one, your agent should be with you, first and foremost, but you need to have the next step taken, which again, it's going to probably cost you, I don't know, $150 maybe to get evaluation of the system and have a HVAC, heating and cooling company, come out and really kind of dig deeper into that item, be it the furnace, the air conditioner, any of those major fundamentals, because it's pillar to post that's going to flag the item, right, Paul? And then from there, they're going to recommend further investigation.
Correct. Absolutely.
So, I guess, is there any other inspections that come to your mind that we really need to talk about?
Well, there's well and septics. So, we live in around a lot of rural areas, especially in the Canton, Stark County area. And so, not every inspector does all of those, but we just happen to do all of the extras, which is good because we can talk about the components of the well. A lot of people moving into a home, they don't have a clue what all these systems are in their basement, the filtration units, the softener, the expansion tanks. All of these things are very foreign to a buyer that has never experienced that before. So it's good to have somebody that can kind of walk through what each item is and also how to take care of them. Who would you contact if I had a problem with any of these issues down below? And then the septic, obviously, that can be a very expensive system in your yard if it no longer works. And we do go through thorough testing with that. If it's not functioning properly, that can be, $20,000-$25,000 repair. So you want to make sure that gets looked at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I think the red flag to me often is when we have a vacant home, and this seems to be the pat thing that people will say to us, and I have to chuckle because if I could tell you how many times I've heard this, only one person lived in the home, and they moved out 6 months ago. Well, if I could tell you how many times I've heard that story, and number one, if that system is not functioning for one person, just think about how it would be for a family of 4, right?
Correct. That's right.
It would be a nightmare. So,
yep. And that is a great point right there. Just thinking about when you're moving into a system where, let's just say an elderly couple lived there for 50 years and it was just the two of them. Then a family of 4 comes in and it doesn't work anymore for that setup. So, yeah.
And that's honestly a real reality of septic and wells. Wells, of course, what you test for is bacteria typically, unless it's a VA buyer, which I believe they still require lead and nitrate testing, correct?
Some do, some don't. I wish I could say that was specific every time, but it just depends on the person you're working with.
Okay. And the other thing is they test for flow rate, and Paul can share a little bit about what flow rate is.
Sure. Yeah. The 2 main things that are common that people get done with us is flow rate and a bacteria test. So we're looking for anything that's being E. coli, typically, if that comes up in your water test, obviously that can make you sick. It's an easy fix, actually, but it is something you should know about. So we're looking for flow rate. When we check for flow rate, we want to see a certain number of gallons per minute coming out of your faucets, out of your tub, especially. We pick an area that's where you can get the most flow. And on average, you probably would see about 10 gallons a minute. And if it doesn't happen that way, there's several things that it could be. And so that's where we talk about your well pump possibly may be going. You could have some older, you don't see this very often, but galvanized plumbing can get so rusted and corroded that it starts to leave so little flow for the water that it starts to slow it down as well. So it just helps us investigate. And by doing that testing, it just digs a little further.
And I think, again, is if you talk about how important a well test is, if you're buying a well and septic home, of course, I've been doing this for 34 years. So there was time in my career where those were not required. And it is now required in Summit and Stark County. It's called a point of sale. And, it's so very important that you get those all completed because we just had recently a home where they ran the water for the well test and all of a sudden it just stopped. So obviously there's a major problem there, correct? And it's called no water to function that house was what it was. So they actually had to drill a new well, and 100-foot well was running about $8,000. So again, that's the kind of cost you're looking at if you have to replace these types of items today. Septic, of course, can go anywhere, I would say safely from $20,000 to $25,000. And that's not, like Paul was saying, that's not replacing the landscaping, the yard that they tore up and reseeding. That is just probably more the physical replacing of the system.
Mhm.
So
Right.
they're all very, I feel like your major fundamental things like your sewer lines, your septic, your wells, obviously furnaces are expensive as well, but you know, those are incredibly costly items if they have to be replaced. So the septic, of course, when you guys test for the septic, and again, just touching on it briefly, what exactly are you looking for? Because obviously a well to me is a little more visual, whereas a septic is not.
Right. That is a very broad question because there is so many types of systems. So we look for problems, simply put, we look for problems that it is not functioning the way it is intended as that system is. So I'll give you an example. There are septics that the tank fills up, it leaches into the yard, which it's supposed to, underground through a filtration system. So you don't see it, or you shouldn't see it, and it filters naturally back into the ground. And then there's another type of system where there's a tank that is there, and there's a lift station where the sump pump takes it up and takes it somewhere else. So we're looking for things like that sump not working anymore. If we're going to run the tub for nearly 40 minutes. I'm trying to remember the exact time on that. So I don't personally do them anymore. So I'm a little rusty on that timing, but we're trying to put in a lot of gallons of water into it to fill it up. We put dye in there so that if we go into a yard, we don't want to see that dye somewhere where it shouldn't be. We're trying to trace that so that it comes out a location of where the discharge is actually supposed to happen. So there's some mechanics, and then also we look at the yard and where it's supposed to discharge. Those are the most fundamental parts of the septic inspection.
Well, and you know, I think the nice thing, especially about using pillar to post, is that they are what we call one-stop shopping. So you need a pest done, they can do it. You need a home inspection done, a septic, a well, they are qualified for all of it. You also test for molds if need, air quality, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And again, we don't get a lot of that, but you know, once in a long while, actually, we get someone that would like that. So I think the other thing that you find about working with myself and my team is that we prepared a beautiful buyer packet. So it says buyer packet, and inside it offers price lists. It tells you the cost of the items that Paul's talking about, and they also provide a discount for premium inspection, right?
That's correct. Yep.
If you do multiple things, there is a discount that they provide as well. But the buyer's book is just a great manual for those that have either purchased or never purchased. And again, we just kind of take for granted that people know what we're talking about when we use our terminologies. You know, I hate to, you know, not that we're doctors or dentists, but again, you know, your doctor can say things to you that you have no idea what they're talking about. They talk it every day, so they do. But I think it's the same thing in our field. You know, when we talk casually about sewer inspections or well and septic inspections and some of the terminologies that we use in this process, you just kind of think everybody knows what you're talking about. The nice thing about our book that we put together is not only does it provide discounts and coupons and that kind of thing, but it also has a nice glossary of terms that really very simply explains like terminologies that we use throughout this process, because there are steps. Every part of the home buying process is a step. Like I said, first you go under contract. The next thing we do is we order the home inspection with pillar to post. And, you know, again, you can review your costs in the book and even have a discussion with them ahead of time, because, you know, I think you as well have a wonderful website. And, you know, if there's questions that a consumer has, a purchaser, you can certainly reach out to Paul and his staff, and they're more than happy to answer your questions, because that is the second step that you're going to have once you purchase your home. And of course, once you've satisfied that home inspection results, be it the septic, the well, and all the tests that you're choosing to do, One thing we didn't touch on, Paul, is a radon test. And to me, radon discovery is kind of like mold to a consumer or someone that has never done home purchasing before, because in my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no such thing as a home with zero radon, correct?
That's correct. I can't say that it has never come back as zero, but there, point something has been possible, but yes.
Right. So a radon test, and if you'd share a little bit about what radon testing, how you do that, and again, it is a very, very simple repair to get that radon level to where it safely needs to be.
That is correct, and that Ohio is known. We have certain areas in Ohio that we are known as having radon. Certain parts of our country, it is very little amounts, but it's just part of our life here. And like Tammy just said, it's incredibly easy to fix, but it's good to know about. So when we set up what we use as continuous monitors, which we put in your basement, and it is testing that for 2 days, just what is going on in your air with radon. And so at the end of that, it gives us an average. So the EPA states that anything over 4.0 picocuries, that's the measurement name, is something they recommend remediating. And just to put that into perspective, you're simply putting a pipe into the ground in the basement, and you're trying to suck and draw air to a different location so it doesn't come into your home. And that can consist of going out your basement wall and up the side of your house. It can also go into a garage area and then the fan up into an attic, so it's a little more hidden. But it is an easy repair. And I know we've talked to plenty of buyers that are very concerned if that system is there. They think, oh my goodness, I have radon. I shouldn't buy this house. But actually, you should be very thankful the radon system is there. They do work. Obviously, it's just another system to make sure it's still functioning. But that's actually a good thing if you have one installed.
It is. And I've actually had rare occasions, but I have had occasions where the systems were installed, maybe 20 years ago, and the internal fan that is in there maybe is no longer functioning. Again, it is just a minor cost repair typically that I've experienced. So, existing systems can oftentimes, if they're not functioning for whatever reason, they typically can be repaired and again, with minimal cost. I think a lot of the scare of radon, I know early on in my career, was people would go online and read things. And again, I think that can be a little overwhelming, especially if you don't realize that. I don't believe I personally or anyone on my team has ever sold a home, and we sell hundreds of homes a year that has zero radon. So I personally can't speak for a zero radon, but are there levels below the 4.0 picocuries established by the EPA? Yes, there are. And that is not an uncommon thing, but it is more common to have our radon readings exceeding the 4.0 picocuries. So very common. But
yeah, and maybe we should touch just real quickly on this in case I failed to do this, but not to scare anybody. But the reason why we test it is so that you're protecting your lungs. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer to cigarette smoke. So it is very important to know about and to get it tested. And again, it's such an easy fix. You're talking about $1,000 to repair that.
It is. And I believe our cost generally, we have a company that we do a tremendous amount of business with. And I think our cost is about $850, unless it's a unique situation of a multi-leveled home or something like that. It's typically about $850. So is there anything else, Paul? Because again, if anyone has a question, feel free to ask. But I just want to thank you for your time. And again, it's so important that you as a consumer do your homework and, be it on your agent, on your home inspection company, because like I said, there's lots of inspection companies out there. I personally feel that Pillar to Post separates themselves. They have a very high level of standards that they have set for themselves, as well as my team and my staff. So, you know, we are here 7 days a week. You know, we work pretty much around the clock anymore. And we're here to accommodate any buyer on their schedule, because again, we're here to make this process easy and an enjoyable process, because it really is a lot of fun to purchase, you know, your new home, your next home, or whatever it may be. So again, Paul, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And you can reach out to us at tammygrogan.com. You can give us a call, 330-704-2060. Feel free to call us, and we'd be more than happy to start your process and begin your home search. So thank you all very much, and have a good night.
Take care. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.